Hello, my name is Iman and welcome to Silver Star's channel. We're going to talk about 4 steps to learn faster. The very first step in starting the process of learning is setting up our goal. What is it that we want to learn? Whatever the goal is, whatever the topic or the context is or the subject is, the goal has to be specific, it has to be achievable, it has to be measurable, and it has to be time bound, meaning that you have to have a specific time in mind that you want to hit this goal by that time. Why is it that it matters to make it specific, achievable, measurable, and time bound? All of these elements are really there to get your focus to stay exactly on what it is that you want to learn. What happens these days as we go to the internet and start the learning process online, there are a lot of different topics and subjects and requirements and whatnot that come our way. And it's extremely easy to get sidetracked. One of the challenges of learning online versus learning in the classroom is the concept of discipline. When you are in a classroom, everybody's paying attention to what's right in front of them, the environment, and the whole setup is geared and designed to promote learning. When I'm sitting at my laptop or I'm sitting by myself in my room, yes, there is an environment or simulation of the classroom, but it is at my fingertips. So the challenge is really staying focused and going through that hour or through that 15 minutes or whatever time limit that you have committed to get that learning going. So the very first step, again, is the setting of our objective and the goal. And that is, the goal needs to be specific, achievable, measurable, and have a deadline, a time-bound goal that I'm trying to achieve by so and so date. The second step that I suggest is using a Lego-like building blocks approach. What am I talking about? Remember when you were kids and you wanted to play with Legos, they were all coming in small building blocks. And once you learned how to put the building blocks together and create a good foundation, then you could have built on top of it and keep going up. Now, if I'm using building blocks and I'm building something up, the minute that I notice maybe I'm not doing it the best way possible, or maybe I'm not really going in the direction that I want to go, I can simply take those building blocks and undo them and restart and start again. Smaller tasks are generally easier to achieve. What am I talking about? And a lot of this you are all familiar with already as silver stars or people who have been in the learning environment. And all I'm doing is just reminding you of what it is that you already know. Let's say I live in San Diego, California, and I want to go to Los Angeles, California. Los Angeles is to the north of San Diego. As I get in my car and I get on the freeway and I start driving, if I see that I'm going in the north direction, Los Angeles is north of San Diego. If I'm going in the north direction, therefore I'm going in the right direction. If for any reason I have taken the southbound direction and I see the south sign, that's a clear sign that I'm not going in the right direction. That is so obvious that it's silly. The same concept really does apply in learning of topics and subjects and all challenges that we want to approach in our life. The smaller you make your task, the smaller you make your sub-goal, let's say, the easier it is to go at it. The number 2 element that you want to go after and play with, as I'm going after smaller goals, and as I'm noticing that they're easier, the possibility of keeping my motivation level up is higher. Progress, moving in the right direction, encourages anybody and everybody to keep stepping in the right direction. When I make a small achievement, that really helps with my motivation and sticking to the task. And it is more digestible and it is also less overwhelming. If you notice, I am currently not that if you notice I'm currently involved in training. I am currently involved in a training. And one of the very common challenges that I see in the classroom environment among all the good people who are participating in that training is the idea of becoming overwhelmed with everything that we are doing. Well, if I break the big goal down to the smaller subtasks, it is much easier to go after it. I did software engineering and computers for a very long time. And the number one recommendation and helping that I did with the junior level people who were starting was exactly that, showing them how to take the big problem, break it down into smaller sub problems, and solving those. The other advantage of it is if I solve or learn the wrong approach, the recovery period is much faster. I don't have to recover everything that I've done from the beginning to that point of learning, but just that particular smaller task. The number three element. So number one was setting of the goal. Number two was using Lego-like or smaller building blocks for learning. Number three is creating and identifying my learning strategy. What I'm talking about there is the fact that different folks, depending on their personalities, depending on their strengths, depending on their weaknesses, depending on their preferences, they really click and pick up with different learning styles. What are different learning styles? Some people have an easier time learning by hearing. Some have an easier time by seeing. Some people are hands-on. They have to practice and really touch the thing and try it in order to really get it, so on and so forth. That's one thing. The other help that you can provide yourself in defining your strategy is finding information and people who are already doing what you're about to learn. For example, let's say I'm learning how to create YouTube videos. If I go on YouTube and start watching other people who have already done it and are providing YouTube videos, I'm going to see examples and samples of the different styles of doing this. For example, in the process of preparing for this video, naturally, I want to look good. So I had to decide how far away from the camera or the laptop or my phone I have to sit in order for the picture to be uh, pleasant to the eye, if you will. And what happens is whenever we are embarking on a new challenge, on a new task, on a new learning, for some reason we are always looking for what is wrong. And I'm guilty of the same thing. I have fallen into the same trap. So as I was preparing for today's session, I was like, oh, is my hair good? Is the background fine? Are these things funny looking out here? So on and so forth. So what I did was I went on YouTube and I watched some other people and I paid attention to their general appearance, the background, if they're using AirPods or if they're using microphones, so on and so forth. The picture don't go off. So on and so forth. So as I watch them and as I am copying them and as I am learning from them, I just decided that this is good enough for this particular video, so I'm just gonna do it. I made it easier for myself. So I kind of sort of tapped into step 2, using smaller building blocks. Speaking of smaller steps, small steps are really easy. We are all in a society that everybody encourages and wants us to raise the bar and set very big goals. That is great. My attention and my intention is for the very big long-term goal way up here. But in order to approach that, the strategy that I'm using are smaller steps from here to get up there. I hope that is clear. The fourth step and the last step, which is really the most critical and valuable step, is just doing it, practicing, not being afraid of failure. Failure is an awesome way of learning what not to do. In the process of practicing, the concept or the idea behind it is any learning requires theory, knowledge, information, and practice. I see many people who get stuck in the process and stage of just collecting information. Let me learn this part, let me do this, let me get that tool, let me go here, let me follow that person, so on and so forth. Pardon my reach, I'm just trying to make sure that the camera stays on and everything goes well. Practice matters, guys. Take small steps. I recorded this video a couple of times in short spurts just to get myself comfortable with the setup and with all the details. And hopefully this is working. Number 2 in the step of practicing, or number 2 recommendation, if I may, set specific times and specific place to just sit down and practice. Assign it to yourself. What I'm talking about there really comes from the concept of working for others. Typically, I did consulting for many, many years. And anytime I wanted to go to a new project, I had to be on location at a specific time, at a specific location, to sit down and start the work. So my suggestion is using the same principle to do the work for myself. The last suggestion in the practice step is set yourself some milestones. Define it for yourself. You can do it in writing, you can do it in the strategy step, you can do it mentally. I really do recommend doing it in writing. And every time that you hit one of your own defined milestones, give yourself a reward. Reward yourself. Rewarding yourself does not mean a big expense. It could be a scoop of ice cream. It could be taking a walk around the neighborhood or on the street, enjoying the sunshine or the rain or the snow for a couple of minutes, for 5 minutes. Excuse me. Pardon me, I have no idea where that came from. Now that we've talked about the 4 steps of learning faster, which I'm going to quickly reiterate on it. Number 1, set your goal. Number 2, use building blocks. Number 3, create a strategy. And number 4, practice, practice, practice. A common question or a expected question, I suppose, again, would be, how can I make this learning process faster, easier? Are there any tips? Are there any recommendations? Absolutely. And these are just what I'm going to suggest as tips to make the learning process easier. Pay attention, and I touched on this very briefly. Pay attention on what your learning style is. Are you visual? Are you verbal? Are you theoretical? Are you practical? So on and so forth. Once you learn that, use it to your advantage. If I'm visual, then I should go for material and training and online courses that have visual presentations, not just audio, because it's going to make me more comfortable when the learning process matches my learning style. So there is a little bit of self-discovery in this process. I would not suggest sitting down and trying to do a research on psychological courses or analysis to figure out what your learning style is. Just notice when you are working or when you're watching things, what sits better with you, what sits well with you, what does not sit well with you. Just I'll make a note of it and move on to the next task. It takes some time to go through this self-discovery process of self-learning. If you're an individual person, a kind of person who can do fine just by themselves, then you're an individual learner. You may also be a social learner, where you love to interact with people and create buddies and have accountability partners, so on and so forth. You may be a logical person. When I did, my background is in computers and engineering, so for a very long time, everything and anything that I did was absolutely based on logic for work. Later on, midlife, I decided to look into spirituality, and that opened up the doors for other non-logical, maybe creative learning styles. It took me some getting used to, and I was doing it on purpose because I knew I was strong with logic. I wanted to add a new way of learning to my tool belt, and creativity was always interesting to me. So I just went that way, and I used creativity in the process of learning spirituality. What this brings me to the last part of learning your lifestyle is that learning your learning style, I apologize, is that there are no right or wrong way for any of this stuff. So whatever you try, please do not pick up the bat and start beating yourself up on the head. Why? When you criticize yourself, when you put too much pressure on yourself, in this day and age of learning online, it is extremely easy to stop and go away and not try learning. When you reward yourself, when you are kind to yourself, when you are nice to yourself, that in itself encourages you to learn some more. Imagine you're helping a 5-year-old to learn something new. If you go the happy, fun, rewarding way, the 5-year-old who's in you would like to continue learning with you. If you punish him, if you blame and criticize them, if you punish yourself, if you criticize yourself, chances are you will stop the whole process and dismiss it. That's why. The second tip that I would like to share with you is that we talked about the learning style, whether it's individual, group, so on and so forth. A good tool that you can always use is to join groups and teams involved in the same learning process. Energy attracts like attracts like. When we go to a place, when we go to an event, to a room where there are a lot of people present with the exact same purpose and energy, we get affected by that. And the tendency is to play easier and make more progress. As working in the groups and teams, you're going to get a lot of advice, you're going to get a lot of tips, or you're going to learn a lot of tricks and do's and don'ts that others have experienced. Another benefit of doing learning in groups is that we come to realize we're not the only people being challenged with that particular learning. Other people are experiencing that. It normalizes the learning curve. The learning curve is, since we are doing something which is new, it's probably very hard to get up there. We have to take in a lot of information. The shorter that learning curve is, the easier planning and playing with it is. Another approach that you can take in joining groups, when you are part of a group and a team, you can start teaching others. What happens is that when we try to teach something to somebody else, we verbalize our thoughts, our plans, our ideas, and naturally it has to make sense. Because if it doesn't make sense, we're going to recognize it right away. Teaching is an extremely effective way of learning. Now, the number one objection to that is, but I don't know this. You do know some beginning steps. Right now, you are watching this video, and I'm proposing 4 steps for learning to make the learning easier and 3 tips to make it, 4 steps to make the learning faster and 3 tips to make it easier. So you have some information. You can take this material and adjust it and massage it and change it. Anything that you figure I'm not doing properly, you can improve on it. And then you can share that with a study buddy, with somebody that you are in that group or in that team with. I suggest trying it. The last item in joining groups and teams is sharing the experience is going to open up new doors for you. It's going to open up new possible solutions for you. In the training that I'm doing in these video productions, a lot of times as I go to the online group sessions, I hear possibilities and I hear solutions that others have tried, and a lot of it is just absolutely gold. The trick in doing that, in sharing, is to listen first and talk second. I would not suggest going to the group with the idea that, hey, I figured all of this out, let me tell you how to do it. No, there is an instructor, there is a teacher, there is a person who is offering that learning, and that's their job. But when they ask for questions, when they ask for sharings, that's your opportunity to start talking and sharing. The last tip to make learning easier is to track your actions and learning journey. The reason you want to track it is because you want to realize, recognize, and observe if and how you're making progress. If you're not making progress, that's an excellent clue that you need to change something. So you got to go back to the beginning and start over. If you are making progress, are you hitting the milestone that we talked about in the first 4 steps? Did you reward yourself? Just check marks, just mental notes. That will help you, celebrate you, empower you, and encourage. These elements, these emotions, are what will help you keep going. The number one action in tracking your action and learning is to show up. Some of this stuff is probably too simple for you, but if you have watched this recording up to this point, you are already taking actions. Congratulations, you have showed up and you have got this far. You're pretty close to finish. I'm going to let you go very quickly. Number 2 suggestion in tracking your actions and learning: practice patience. We live in a society where instantaneous and immediate gratification has become the norm. So anything I want to do, I send an email, I expect an answer. I send a text message, I expect a text message back. All of that is really doing a number on our patience. And I see that in the society. I see a lot of people who are practicing a lot of impatience. And guess what? They're really cheating themselves out of the joy of learning, if they're interested in learning. Or they're cheating themselves out of the joy of being and living. Patience is required when we are trying to learn a new task. A trick that I play myself is when I set goals for myself, when I set my sub goals, I under promise and over deliver to myself to practice my patience. And it does a wonderful number. It really helps me keep moving forward, keep taking steps one at a time, and learning new skills. The very, very last suggestion, and I promise, is rinse and repeat. Anytime during your learning process, you come across a challenge that doesn't sit right with you, it doesn't make you, help you feel good, you do have the choice of going back and starting the process again. Not necessarily all the way to the beginning, maybe 1 or 2 steps. You be the judge of that. Rinse and repeat, which really is interacting with the concept of practicing consistently, is really, really the key in learning anything new. Occasionally, you may add some conditioner for extra shine to the process of rinsing and repeating. That was my attempt at being funny. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I wish you a beautiful day or night. Bye-bye.